Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lambremont Weber, and today we have a true privilege to be with filmmaker Frank Jacob coming to us from Bavaria, Germany, and we're going to talk about an extraordinary film that he's made with filmmaker Tonia Madenford called Packing for Mars, Packing for Mars. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you for having me, Alfred. It's great to be with you.
You know, that is such a breakthrough film. I mean, it just, you know, it absolutely was an extraordinary film. And I know that I saw it almost when it first launched, I think, and for me, I said it was the best exopolitical film ever made. I mean, that was just and I know I might be biased, but I'm wondering, in the time that it has been out, could you just share with our audience the sort of reception that it's gotten, because it's so far ahead of its time in terms of what the terrestrial audience thinks. And I'll share an anecdote later that happened, but I'd really like to find out, in the time that it's out, if you could just share with us how Earth has welcomed Packing for Mars.
Well, first of all, thank you for those words. It's also an honor and a privilege to be able to make a film like this because, it's kind of a risk. It's a risk venture. And when I started the film, I had experienced making films, mostly documentaries, but not really in the genre of exopolitics. But I was interested in, and I was working with some of the state-of-the-art tools in the industry. So I thought, wouldn't it be great to make a film in a subject matter that normally doesn't have the privilege of being, documented and captured in a higher, quality format and composited and put together in a professional standard that meets the par of a Hollywood film or a much larger budget documentary. So that was for me the thrill of making the film. And I have to say that when we came out with the first sneak preview in about 7 months before its official release, we were at Contact in the Desert, and we had a spot in front of about 2,000 people. And we kind of had Erich van Daniken opening for us as a surprise sort of event that day. So there was a good lot of people there, and the film started actually quite late. And you know how these events are. People have been soaking in information all day. Most of them are kind of, ready to fade away at the end of the day. And to my surprise and to our great surprise and pleasure was that it seemed to resonate and hit like a bomb, because people were riveted and stayed late until. It's a 2-hour film. I mean, it's not the kind of film that just, you can breeze through. It's something that requires a lot of focus, and there's a lot of, thick information in it, and a lot of thought-provoking information. And the great thing was that the next day after the film screening, we had literally hundreds of people flooding our table and just freaking out about how, when they were thinking about watching it, and they sat down, and within 5 minutes they were just shook up and they could not stop watching it all the way through. So for me, that was from a craftsmanship perspective, an indication that the film has good pacing, the film has a good edit, and it's not just something where you feel like it's dragging. So that was a very, very important thing. And after that, it just seemed to ramp up. I mean, when we then officially launched it, we had an immediate resonance. Maybe not with a large scale. We're not a large studio or anything, so we don't have the marketing budget of Universal or Columbia Pictures or whatever. But we did have an immediate resonance with some very, very pivotal and important people, especially people in the scene. And one such person, of course, is yourself, Alfred. And I really, really was blown away by the review that you wrote about it, because, you know, you really saw it. You know, you really grokked it, as they would say, and saw the deeper levels in the film as well. And you raised some interesting questions, and you know, those are things that the film is supposed to do. And so, you know, I think it's really had the effect of having people, on the one hand, getting information put together that they've never seen before. And many people told us that there was things in this film that they had no idea about. While at the same time, there are some people that had been exposed to some of the information in the film, because it isn't all original. Some of it was found from sources that had actually been out there before, quietly hiding, who said that the way the dots were connected in the film is what made it work for them, as well as finding out information that they didn't necessarily know. So that was another really great thing. And we also then, you know, were approached by people. One of the most powerful moments we had is when we won the film. We put the film into the UFO Congress Ebby Film Festival, and we won the People's Choice Award, which for me is really the greater award of all, because the People's Choice Award means that the people like the film. And, you know, sometimes with festivals, you don't always necessarily know if the people that are the judges of the festival have a particular film in mind, or a particular flavor of film or topic that they want to expose that year. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the best film will win the judges award. It might mean that the film the judges kind of want to have out there will win. So the People's Choice is really the award that you want. And we won that. And when we won that, we also met with a very interesting character called Dr. Ken Johnson. And Dr. Ken Johnson was a civilian astronaut who had the privilege and honor of actually working as a beta team member of the Apollo program, developing the modules, testing the equipment, working out the bugs. It's very, very amazing stuff. And he was there, and he came up to us and he said that for him, later in his career, after the Apollo program wound down, he was put in charge of the film and photographic archive of the Apollo missions. And he had an eye-opening experience when one day he happened upon a room and saw a large number of people bent intently over negatives. And he was saying to them, "Hey, what's going on here?" And one of the people turned to him and said, "We're the professional strippers." And for him, I think that was his aha moment, that everything you see out there in the documented evidence isn't necessarily what really is or really did go down. And then he began to set aside the pictures of the archive. And at one point, he was told essentially by his boss to get rid of it. And he interpreted that very creatively by saying, well, he didn't tell me to destroy it. He just told me to get rid of it. So he made copies. And those copies he's now apparently putting into a museum. And I met him, and he said he pulled out some of the pictures that we had been able to put in the film because of having talked to Jose Escamilla. And Jose, offered and donated some of his excerpts of his Moon Rising films that we were able to excerpt into the film. And the pictures that we were showing in the film he had with him, and they were the ones that were not smudged. So it was fascinating to see pictures of the bases on the dark side of the moon clearly in sight. And it was a total vindication, of course, of some of the themes in the film. So those are just a couple of the things, some of the highlights. Of course, we were at Nexus in Australia, and we got to know Duncan Rhodes very well. And the film premiered in Australia at his conference. And again, it was there that we really met with some very interesting key figures and interesting, ex-agency personnel that were lurking around, who got close to us and really, shared with us the feeling that they were very, very happy that we had put together a film like this, that it was really time for a film like this to come out. At the same time, I do feel that the film is definitely still ahead of its time. I mean, every day that goes by, more information comes out that seems to confirm what we were putting into the film. And when you're making a film like this, you're kind of grasping, you're you're trying to put together a puzzle. You know, Alfred, like you've got this piece, you've got that piece, you know, and you start putting them into the board. You know, you're never going to fill the whole puzzle. That's impossible. Not one person could ever know any one thing in its complete entirety. So our mission, and my mission when I started the film, was to kind of find as many of the pieces I can find and put them into a nice grid, and then we'll see what happens, right? I mean, we still are getting more information, and it's not necessarily about putting information which is, you know, I mean, everyone in the scientific community will always ask you for scientific evidence and proof and whatnot. And one of the films that we did just before Packing for Mars was called Solar Revolution. In that film, we had people like Michael Persinger and Rick Strassman talk about the scientific evidence behind some of the phenomena that were the thesis of Dieter Burrs, the biophysicist in Germany for whom we did the film. But in a film like Packing for Mars, where you've got a generally large public denial of a covert, secret breakaway civilization developing things out of the public eye, is just not. It's just not something that anybody, they just can't accept it. You know, people really, there's this line, you know, that you find that I posit this, you know, I posit that yes, indeed, there is this breakaway civilization, and I'm willing to go to that, to cross that line and basically just accept that it's real. And then when you accept it, you begin to pull information in to confirm that, because it's all in the magnetic grid out there anyway. We're all going to download it if we're tuned into it, just like a radio station. Those people who are on the other side of that line, who belong to those who have been indoctrinated into the public view, the public mainstream ideologies, the scientific standard that we're at, the fact that the mainstream news is telling you the truth, all this group of people will never come. And unfortunately, I think we're still in part of the world or part of the universe or time in the universe where the majority of the population on this planet still belongs to that group. So you have to kind of come to terms with that when you put out a film like this.
Wow. Now, I'm just wondering, because having lived inside that world on a day-to-day basis, what I mean is living inside the Mars disclosure world as I do on a day-to-day basis, being one of the people, I should say, just for disclosure to the audience so that people know that I'm on the advisory board to the Mars Anomaly Research Society. So I'm very pro disclosure of life on Mars and the various secret space programs on Mars. That's, you know, part of what I do. And so I'm an active proponent, just so everybody knows what my position is, okay? And what I've noticed is that in the, quote, ufological and exopolitical community, there's a sharp divide. It's almost like a canyon between people who are open to it and people who are closed to the possibility. I'm not talking about humanity, which is generally a very open-minded species, I find, on an individual basis. But I'm talking about inside the exopolitical community. And they're almost a reflection of the warring parties that you describe exist inside the exopolitical community. And I'm just wondering if you encountered that in not only in creating the film and producing and directing it, but in this time now that you've been exhibiting it, if you've encountered any of that information war about Mars. And I say that because it was reported to me just in the last day or so, you know, and this kind of jolted me because I knew that we had an interview coming up. that one of the chief Mars experiencers that I know, both of whom both of us know him, and I now know probably half a dozen or more Mars experiencers, but Andy Bishago was recently introduced to a very prominent exopolitician who came up to him and said, well, I don't believe a word of your Mars experiences. And it's sort of shocking that someone who is in the field of exopolitics would take that position. And I'm wondering if you've experienced that kind of anomaly.
Well, I think what you're hitting on here is kind of a general theme that is prevalent all throughout society. And it's no wonder to me that a field like exopolitics or ufology will draw, on the one hand, people who are, everyone's a different kind of personality type. And there's those people that are the personality types that are go with the flow type people who open themselves up and take information in and explore where it goes. And there's those that are the more of the scrutinizing scientific perspective who want to see hardcore evidence. And then there's the people out there who I think are generally really active, or I don't know if they're paid or whatever, but they're people who are placed or planted either by organizations or out of their own inner frustrations to position themselves within a scene, and they're like moles. And they will basically, and the dangerous part is that these moles and these personality types within organizations, they will often look like they're somebody very important. And you'd be surprised probably if you found out the real person behind the outside skin of a lot of people, not just in exopolitics, but in politics in general, or even in science. There's a lot of fraud going on in science, and a lot of infighting going on in the latest scientific developments. So for me, it's absolutely no surprise. Did I encounter it? Did we encounter it? Absolutely, but it's just, I made an active, both of us made a conscious and active decision to keep our personal feelings and thoughts and judgments and scrutiny out of these camps. And I don't want to be putting one person against another. In our film, we have a lot of mishmash of personalities which may not gel with one another in one room, but it was not about that. It was about letting everybody tell their story. And like I was saying earlier, it's about putting this puzzle together. And part of the puzzle includes all different facets and sides of the situation. So I think the biggest mistake and the sad thing for me watching things like what you're talking about in the ufology community is that people can't let go of the need to be, they have to be right, or they have to be the credible one, and the others aren't the credible one. They're the authority, the others can't be because they are. These kinds of positions they belong to kind of a mental thought pattern that belongs to an old world, and I believe we've entered a new timeline. And this timeline for me is like looking at it as like you're at a bunch of trains lined up at a train station. All the tracks are parallel beside each other, and we're all, if you look at these trains as different timelines, we're all on these different trains, and some of us are on a train that's a new timeline, and that train is going to start veering off when those trains leave the train station. For a long time, they're traveling on those tracks parallel to each other, and they still see those trains, and they still see those people on those trains and part of those timelines. But one day, it eventually, in the case of this train analogy, the trains move so far apart that we don't even really see those anymore. So I think it's very, for me personally, I know for Tonia Madenford as well, it's important to invest more in the idea that you follow, you stick to your position of not necessarily judging or discounting or whatever anybody that's in any kind of scene that you're involved in, but you just let them be and you continue on your path and you observe them. And if one day they're gone, and there's no point. I'm just a pacifist, I guess, and I don't really want to engage in conflict. I like to explore the stories of every single person, and I love to explore the stories of everybody who is a participant in Packing for Mars. And so, yeah, I do think it's kind of sad. I do have to say it is sad. And for those people who are part of who are the shills, that are out, the disinformation agents, whatever you want to call them, I feel sorry for you guys, and I feel sorry that you have to be playing that role still that you're playing. But it is a role, and it's just an act, you know, and all of us are acting in our bodies to the best ability that we have according to the information, the education, the bias, the politics, the society, and the race, whatever we're part of. And we're all basically indoctrinated into a system. None of us are seeing the truth. And to profess that we have the truth and to think that we have the absolute truth is ridiculous.
Well, let me ask you this. Would you and Tonia be amenable and available if we could put together, and maybe this has been done, I don't know, but a screening at the next term, 2017, of Packing for Mars for the U.S. Congress?
Absolutely. I'm all in for it.
Yeah. And the reason I asked that, just a bit of background, because I've been at this for a while, as you know.
Yes.
And this is the strangest thing, and maybe there's a cosmic design to this, but I was very active, and we won't use names, but you'll, you know, just to get, there was a very active organization. There is a very active organization that was working, has been working on disclosure for the last 10 years. And at one point, I was part of that. And in fact, I was part of a thing called the Citizen Hearing. I was one of the initiators of it. And I worked with the organizer to do the first draft of it, and it was up on the website. And then they got $1 million grant, and all of a sudden I was no longer part of it. And the reason why is that I was a proponent of disclosure of the extraterrestrial life on Mars and the U.S. Mars project. So we were all excluded. And then a bunch of people of the other wing of exopolitics got to do the dog and pony show at the National Press Club.
Yes.
In front of 5 congressmen. And that was all on behalf of the Rockefeller Initiative wing of the Hillary Clinton branch, John Podesta branch of disclosure. Well, little did that person know that I met with Governor Winthrop Rockefeller in 1966 at faculty lounge at Yale Law School. Winthrop Rockefeller was sort of the time travel controller of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. He was the governor of Arkansas, and the Rockefeller kind of feudal lord that was deployed in Arkansas in the southwestern part of the U.S. They sent Rockefeller brothers to each part of the U.S. to kind of control them as feudal lords. There was a rumor that he might have been the biological father of Bill Clinton, but some people have other theories. So that's kind of the deep state politics of that. And now that wing of the party has been defeated, and the Rockefeller Initiative has kind of been exposed. There's questions whether Podesta is actually head of a pedophile ring that was connected to the Epsteins as well, that Bill and Hillary Clinton are part of. So there's some shadows over that disclosure area. And now the opposite forces have come in, and Trump hasn't declared anything about this issue. None of them have, but there are some military people who might be open to it. We'll see. But the point is that the Mars issue, we were left out then. So, well, heck, let's get together and let's go up and try now, you know?
I think the Mars issue is one that is so, you know, I've noticed that the people that are part of the disclosure lobby are focusing pretty much 90% of their focus on UFOs, terrestrial sightings of UFOs, and alien contact and interaction with the government of the world. And of course, the sharing of technologies, and they mentioned black ops projects. but they don't really go down the rabbit hole to my liking as much as I'd like it to be all. And I noticed, the other day, last year our film was premiered for World Space Week in Salzburg, Austria, alongside at a theater alongside another movie which was just released called The Visit, an Extraterrestrial Encounter. And that movie was basically made under the premise that what if an extraterrestrial did land, and the person who made the film went around to all the different agencies responsible and got them to cooperate and pretty much act like an extraterrestrial had indeed landed. And all you have to do is watch about 10 minutes of that film, and you just realize how absurd it is. The position of the United Nations, chairwoman about this issue, and the way they're acting completely, clearly there's never been contact with extraterrestrials. Clearly there's never been an alien craft ever to have visited the Earth. Clearly there's no aliens, no technology, nothing. It's the vanguard of that line I was telling you about earlier. That film, for me, symbolizes that absolute commitment to the investment in this unconsciousness with respect to the issue. And that's why it's no surprise to me that you got segregated, when you brought up, because you were going down the rabbit hole. A lot of people don't even know about things like the chronovisor and time travel. It's just people don't know about David Anderson's work. They don't know that Andy Bouchago and others were involved in jumping through time, and they don't want to accept it because they've been educated to believe that time travel is not possible, that it would cause, ruptures in the time-space fabric and whatnot. They've been basically educated to believe that it's, on the one hand, okay, you can imagine that UFOs might exist. It's a big universe after all. But time travel and other bases and a breakaway civilization, that, to me, that is more logical than anything. If there were crashed and reverse engineered technologies, and we do this all the time, we do this, simply, if you look at it politically, if a Russian craft lands and crashes in American territory, what are they going to do? Just return it to the Russians? No, they're going to take it into their labs and dissect it and see what the Russians are up to. It's human nature. So if craft, and there's so many sightings out there now, like Jose had this one line, I don't know if I put it in the film or not, but he said there's so many sightings out there now that if you were to take all the sightings that take place in one day and put them on the mainstream news, you'd think there's literally an invasion going on the planet. So, just there's, if you're prepared to accept that that's going on, you're prepared to accept that out of those hundreds of thousands of sightings, some of them are bound to make mistakes or crash or be shot down or whatever, and there is reverse engineering going on, then you have to accept the fact that somebody's doing the reverse engineering. And out of those people doing that reverse engineering, they're not disclosing it to the rest of us. They're actually using the technology and the findings from that technology to gain an advantage. And, in the case of Packing for Mars, I know I don't want to, let's not forget the outgoing premise of that film was the fantastic book Alternative 3, written by Leslie Watkins, a Fleet Street reporter in the 1970s. And Leslie Watkins, after we released the film, that was another one of the highlights. He got in touch with us shortly after, and he was just about to publish or republish Alternative 3, the first time in 40 years. And when he found out about the film, we gave him, of course, immediately access to it, and he was just blown away by it. And ever since then, we've teamed up. And we were even able to help, help with some of the graphics designs and stuff with some of our artistic team. And we found out through, and I was probably the first person in 40 years to interview Leslie about the book and get into all the nitty gritty about it. And I asked him, I said, come on, are you an agent? Tell me, a lot of people out there, there's this whole mythology about this book out there. Was it a fact put out as fiction? A lot of people, there's so much information and so much mythology about that book. And, Leslie was just, he's just such a fascinating character that he's willing to just, he's not pretending that he's like, some brilliant channel of truth or he's a disinformation. He's just saying, look, I wrote this book because I felt something wasn't right. And I started to, invent it. And And as I now know, you know, having done Solar Revolution and talked to people like Michael Persinger and found out about the magnetosphere holding all of the thought patterns and all the thinking and ideas of all of humanity through all time. It's all out there like a giant cloud computer sitting in the magnetosphere. And we are resonating with that magnetosphere. So is it a surprise to me to know that Leslie Watkins 40 years ago could actually tune in to the breakaway civilization and write a hands down expose about what is going on with this breakaway civilization? No, it isn't. And it was, for him, it was an eye-opening experience too, because of, you know, information that I was sharing with him. And so he's now totally open to the idea that, you know, he wrote it as basically a download. You know, and I think, you know, basically we have to, you know, venture into we have to stop thinking, I think, in terms of black and white and think in time, linear time. We have to think much more, and this is why that film, by the way, Arrival, which I can only recommend if you haven't already seen it, is so touching, because it's one of the first films, fictional films from Hollywood ever put out, that really takes apart the idea of linear time. Time is not linear. We think it is, and so when we think it's linear, we need this, you know, that's why there's this camp out there of people that will refuse to get into the Mars agenda, because they need to see it linear. You know, they see it, okay, 30, 40 years, you know, we have Elon Musk, you know, out there trying to develop this. We have Richard Branson, we have Jeff Bezos, the multi-billionaires all building their private fleet. You know, but one of the whistleblowers that contacted us after we released the film, and I've been compiling all these stories since then, made this interesting comment that mankind is like the grasshoppers in the summer who don't know that winter's coming. And it's a very pregnant statement, because it says to us that basically if we don't start waking up and we don't open up to our full potential of knowledge and information, we're going to be falling prey to this concept, this timeline that is, you know, bringing us doom and gloom. No, that's a mouthful. I'm sorry I talked so much.
No. That, you know, that is really a tremendous amount of food for thought. And I'm actually asking you the question about, would you be amenable to bringing Packing for Mars to a congressional showing, kicking off a congressional hearing on disclosure on life on Mars and the Mars visitation program? Because, you know, I mean, this is a long-range effort that perhaps we would start with an invitational screening on Capitol Hill of Packing for Mars, followed by a panel for invited congressmen and aides, you know, and media, and you know, so that we can, as a community of interested Earth people and Mars experiencers, and there might be some Martians in the audience, I don't know, I mean, you can't tell. This seems to me to be a very feasible and reasonable way to proceed, because we have a fellow Homo sapiens population on Mars. We know that there's a lot of backwards and forwards. The Mars experiencers are a peer population of yourselves, the filmmakers. We've all known each other for a decade or more now. You know, I mean, it seems to me, and we have to see what the incoming Congress is, because I think that a lot of truthers may have been elected in the kind of, you know, in the trumpet, we'll call it. I mean,
I don't know.
I have read a lot of, you know, I'm an old hermeneuticist, and I've read a lot of interpretations of prophecy over the last couple of weeks that claim to say that you know, Trump is in the same vein as Napoleon and these other characters. I won't use the H term, but these are the the kind of movers and shakers that shake things up. And those are the guys that are usually open to social experiments. I mean, if he's going to, if he finds out that he can build a Trump hotel on Mars, he's going to do it, right?
Right. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
open.
I mean, really.
I'm totally open to shaking things up. We need it desperately, you know. So for
Yeah.
me, you know, as much as I don't align myself politically in any one direction, because I do believe that all of it is just, you know, a dog and pony puppet show. So, you know, whether Hillary, whether Trump, it's just, you know, one polarity of the same bad coin, you know. And but, you know, I like to. There's always this idealist in me that likes to think. And I was fascinated watching that whole election process go down in the United States. You know, just, I mean, I've never, you have to say, you got to give it to Trump at least for a few things. Like, for one, his treatment of the mainstream media. I mean, I love it. You know, the first time you ever had a presidential candidate in this, like, prestigious forum of the presidential debates where nobody says anything politically incorrect because it's dangerous, you could lose votes. No, he just came right out and said, they're basically liars, you know. And I just read something written by John Rappaport, a brilliant piece, you know, who also presented at Nexus an amazing piece about journalism. And, you know, he basically, it was clear that Trump, when he invited the press for a briefing, for his first briefing, they were going there to find out, you know, what is going to be the protocol for getting access to the presidency. And he just said, basically, I hate you all. You're a bunch of liars, you know, and I'm not going to put up with it anymore. And you really got to hand it to him for kind of taking the risk. He went all in. And, you know, he said some awful things, you know, some totally embarrassing things, shocking things. And in a lot of ways, you had the sense from him, at least my perception over here was he didn't give a damn. You know, he would just say it. And if it came to eat him up, well, you know, if the people still vote for him, obviously they still want him. So he's going to continue on his path. And somehow there's massive discontent. And this is all part of, you know, I think that this sort of a malice and a malfeasance in the political system worldwide that people are fed up with. They're tired of smooth-talking politicians who are in the back pocket of big money and big pharma and big corporations. I mean, you know, the Vaxxed film and De Niro's, you know, the takedown of De Niro and that whole thing was a perfect example of how well orchestrated the media has become to take down anything which challenges the status quo, especially when it comes to deep pockets like the pharma industry. Now, I mean, the Mars issue is something which, of course, challenges those basically holding the purse strings on the drip feed of technology to us. You know, like the fact that we're running around with iPads now we think is glorious, whatever. But I'm sorry, these are obsolete technologies which have been invented and are probably 50 years behind the state of the art. But we think they're great because we've been dumbed down to believe that they're great, you know. But I mean, so I think, yeah, I mean, it's also exciting to me that, you know, maybe there is a guy that he doesn't have a disclosure agenda. I mean, let's face it. And this is an issue that I always had with people that were praying for Hillary to get in because she was going to finally disclose about extraterrestrials. You know, the flag that went up in my head was like, was she really? Then why didn't she do it when she was in the president's, you know, seat with Clinton? I mean, they were meeting with Rockefeller right there, right back then. Why didn't they do it then? They could have. You know, if they really wanted to, if they believed it, you know, they would have. Like anyone would. You would, I would, come on. Any normal human being that gets access to this information, who isn't politically gagged and strangled, is going to reveal the truth because he's going to know we deserve to know it. And so, sorry, the Hillary thing, I never bought it. And the fact that Trump has no position for me is maybe more hopeful than a fake false flag president that claims that they would have disclosed, which never then would have. Because, you know, there are always these coded statements like, oh, yeah, as soon as I get elected, I'm going to find out what it's all about. And if it is, you know, then great. And if it isn't, if it's all just, you know, a misunderstanding, then we'll tell that too. And you know what the release was going to be then? It was going to be, oh, yeah, it was all overblown. It was a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So, totally. I mean, you know, Trump, go, man.
Yeah.
Shake it up. Everyone in Germany is going, oh my God, Trump, you know. I'm like,
yeah. No, well, I'm so, this is given, seriously, Frank, have so much hope now because this is the first exopolitical project that has come along that I can remember, like in 2 years, that is solid and can give hope. That is to organize events in Washington around life on Mars and packing for Mars as a quality presentation, sort of a calling card, because it's been shown at international venues, it's won international prizes, it's won prizes of distinction.
Hey, it's in German.
Yeah, right, and it's and it has witnesses and experiencers and etc. So there are calling cards now. There are many more witnesses that can be brought, and
absolutely.
As we're speaking and as you're speaking, this hope in me is starting to, and this project is really starting to grow as something that we can now galvanize the community about, that isn't that Podesta Clinton, oh, well, we might take you out to Area 51 and show you a flying saucer, or something like that, which is what they were kind of dangling out on the late night talk shows.
Yeah, I think I'm totally, and I'm sure I can speak for Tonia here too. We'd be open to it. The only thing is we want to make sure it would never be something which would restrict a bias or have a bias or any kind of like
right.
It would just be open. And I remember when I first landed, the day I went on the journey with the backpack and the camera, and I landed in Vancouver and we started talking.
Yeah.
I think you then, the intention was to really open the doors to all the different, areas and factions, and not to really restrict it to one or the other camp, I mean, and when you start on a journey like that, you don't, in a case like myself, I really was somebody who didn't come from the field. I came into it because I was curious, and I was a believer in UFOs when I was in 6th grade. The Billy Meyer thing really got my interest, and so, but I buried it, when I became an adult, and even though somebody gave me Alternative 3, many years ago, I never thought I'd be making a film about it, because, you get integrated in life, and of course you can't really entertain these kind of bizarre ideas and still think you can communicate with normal people around you, so basically I buried it. But when I decided to get back into it, you go out on this journey and you have to kind of trust the universe to open the doors, like that line in the film, the universe will open the doors for a fool wishing to know a secret. And I think I did really, and I still have that, and both of us have that attitude, that we aren't polarized, one way or the other. Hey,
right.
You're invited, you can come and see it. Do I have expectations that they're going to come? Not necessarily. Do I expect that there's going to be some, naysayers and shills there? Yeah, for sure, absolutely. But they're all welcome, because you can't really defend a position that is open, that's saying, look, we're putting this out as a piece of a tapestry of information, and everybody who's got some part of the story that wants to share it has a safe and open territory that's neutral, that they can talk about it in. And that includes all the people that have come out. And when we started the film, I mean, back then there was Andy, there was Laura, there weren't a heck of a lot of people out there, and even David wasn't really on board all the way, and he finally, now he's totally in deep, David Wilcock.
Oh yeah, right.
So now he's in deep, and he's the Mars expert, and all the people but you know what? We all need to be together on one page, or at least, say, look, I'm going to come on, to this platform, but I don't necessarily agree with you, but I want to be, and I also said that to people too. Look, we want to document this. This is for posterity. We want to. What happens in 100 years? We look back at this time, and somewhere it had to start. Somebody had to start putting together something professional, organized, neutral, clean, and open-minded. And if the film was the stepping stone to doing that, then I'm then I feel like I've done my part in in helping to push disclosure to another level.
Yeah, and in the style of the filmmaker that comes to mind is Michael Moore, that this is a perfect sequel, right? I mean, here we have Packing for Mars goes to Washington. Well, that's the opening scene of the sequel to Packing for Mars,
Yeah.
because the goal is, let's just say that the goal is congressional disclosure hearings on the $3 trillion program of U.S. bases on Mars. I mean, if you got a $3 trillion program, you got to disclose it, right? Well,
Yeah.
okay, the $3 trillion program of U.S. bases on Mars, and you're going to have, we can get them at least 8 to 12 witnesses who have been at and are cognizant of the $3 trillion U.S. program of bases on Mars, the infrastructure, the technology, the mission, the purposes. We know at least 25 to 50 people who have been there and back. I've talked to many people who have been there and back, and we have a list that has been compiled by multiple people who, there was permanent people there. In Michael Ralph spent 20 years there as part of the permanent security staff. If he comes down as a witness and he's subpoenaed, he could, and decides to talk, he could provide a complete list of the VIPs, because apparently one of the visits that the Mars base operator, that the sort of the, let's call them the leavers, the leavers, no, that's Brexit, the breakawayers did as part of their initiation is that they would take people out to Mars, and that was like their secret initiation, their mystery school. Oh, we'll take you to Mars.
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra, when he sang "Take Me to the Moon," and Mars, that was his secret message, because he had been to Mars and he was like il capo of the breakaway civilization. That's how the gangland and the mafia had probably been to Mars, and all the dark forces that are running the satanic side of the U.S. That's what they were using, right? The mystery school of Mars were the VIPs. I'm just speculating, but you have to think like a gangster, because that's who's been in charge, right?
Well, yeah, it's true. I mean, that a lot of these kinds of ideas require you to, to place your mind into a different kind of vibration, for sure. That's always the question. Do you want to go there, or do you want to get there another way? Nobody knows the answer to these things. And I know that for us, I know that we've definitely hit on quite a few sensitive areas, and it's manifested in unusual ways. Just things, anomalous things that happen where you just kind of shake your head and go, okay, maybe now, like, when the film was being made, it was made in absolute secrecy. From the day that I got back from the first round of filming onward, I just kept quiet about all of it, and Tonia did. We didn't tell our family, we didn't tell our friends. We would just go out on quiet filming missions and come back and quietly gather and quietly edit and quietly compile. And it wasn't until we dropped it in its full, completed state that we could then become subject. Because a lot of people ask that question. Well, did you have little MIBs come to your door and stuff? At the time that we were making it, no, But it's funny now that there's things that happen that we just, we get blocked, and they're obvious. But we get through them. But they're just little things that are there that make you realize, you know, someone is trying to stop you from getting it out there. And we're not part of the mafia. We're not part of the breakaway civilization, because we won't go there. Because a lot of those people that are in those groups, like Hillary and Podesta and stuff, as you're now reading and as WikiLeaks is bringing out and stuff, I mean, they practice some pretty hideous stuff. I mean, I don't know if I could ever, you know, I could ever go there. I don't even know if I would shake the hand of, you know, a Hillary Clinton, because I'd be worried, you know, like of getting some kind of strange like energy transfer, you know, because it's like, whoa, these people are, if they're seriously doing what is sort of leaking out now, it's just sad. It's very, very sad, and it's scary. And you don't want to be messing around with those people. So, you know, I think there's strength in numbers, and if there were to be kind of a forum where this film would be shown as, you know, as a symbol for like a kickoff to an event where a lot of people talk, I guess there's safety if people get together and share the information and put it on the public record. And I think there's a lot to be gained from those dark forces by putting out disinformation and by causing the factions of disclosure to fight with each other. Because if they're busy fighting each other about who's better and who's, you know, got the best and the newest and the truth and whatnot, it never really ever gets put out there clearly, because everyone, you know, will always have a reason to doubt it.
Right, because at this stage, really, if you think about it, it's extraordinary to try and hide a secret that your nearest planetary neighbor is inhabited by Earthians and by Martian humans. I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, that the U.S. government has a $3 trillion program there. It's like, that's enough money to make, I mean, it's almost impossible to hide it. And so what I'm trying to elicit here is that, let's say, because you brought up a very suggestive image, and that is, you recalled when you got off the plane to Vancouver and when you got here, right, to Vancouver. And this is almost like a second go round. We're almost like on a second loop now. It says, okay, we're on a second loop now. And
well, the anniversary of the release is in 5 days.
Yeah. and suppose now, okay, well, we're supposed to jump to the next level now. Okay, well, what's the next level? And the next level is social change.
Yes.
Yeah, and so social change has to do with policy, because you know, we have to go to the seat of policy and inform the incoming policymakers that $3 trillion has been spent in the taxpayer's name at the next door planet, that, you know, all these famous people have gone there. Some witnesses are saying that up to 60 million people have been taken under false pretenses to Mars and other industrial facilities in the solar system. And, you know, and kind of break that, you know, really break that bubble, that dark bubble that's in the Congress that has maintained that silence. And it seems to me that that's very timely now, because of the utter moral discrediting of the Rockefeller, Podesta, Clinton faction that has been trying to, you know, they're Satanists who have been charged, and I use that term literally, who have been holding down the fort for the negative side of the secret space program in the U.S. and in Washington.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I mean, that makes you wonder about who's moving into the White House, and to what extent will they be able to crack through that bubble, and or will they or won't they? I mean, the thing is, we always hear that election after election, a new president, but essentially nothing really changes, because it's basically a position of a person who's a puppet of some greater forces that don't align themselves with particular nationalities, but are more of a global group. And I often had this voice telling me, if Trump were for real, why is he still? Why is nobody basically taking him out? Because you hear about all the people that are bringing out the truth being taken out, and or is he actually in danger? Is he aware that he might be taken out? Has he doubled his defenses? Is he somebody who's paranoid about it, or is he somebody who's comfortable in a Napoleonic kind of way, like you mentioned earlier, that it's his destiny to shake up things, and maybe with a bit of luck, he might actually penetrate that bubble and go all the way, and wouldn't have any qualms. I mean, he was tossing around the whole birther thing with Obama at the time, and so he wasn't ashamed of putting himself and his reputation on the line for that. Now that he's president, or he's about to be inaugurated, is he going to continue and become even more outrageous in the way he cracks open the system, or is he going to just quietly be absorbed again as always? I'm curious to see how it's going to develop, but I think that everything that we can do, I'm not going to stop. It's not going to stop me from continuing on the path that I've forged, and I'm sure that counts for you as well. I mean, that you're somebody who's committed to putting out the information that people need to know, that they don't find in the mainstream, and you're hungry for the truth, and so am I, and so is Tonia, and so are a lot of people out there. So we're never going to stop, because you can't really stop. If it's in your blood and it's in your character and in your soul, you can try to hide from it for a while, but eventually you're going to have to continue. So I think that the positive signs are out there. If anyone ever could be in a position to initiate a new way of thinking in politics, it would probably be a Donald Trump. He's now in office. He's done it with the media. And if he continues, who knows? Who knows how far we can go? But, I'm not counting on it, and I don't need it for it to happen. I'm just going to contribute in the best way that I know how, as opportunities arise.
Yeah. Now, how can people who are tuning in to our program and interview, how can they access the film Packing for Mars?
Well, thanks for asking that. The best way, of course, to learn anything about the film is to visit the official website. That's the www.packingformarsmovie.com URL, which now is available in both English and German, because we worked hard all summer and early fall to transcribe the film into German, and we hired and worked with a company to basically dub the film, because we tried it with subtitles. People wanted to see the film in Germany. It's amazing how people are hungry for the information here. But we tried it. I watched 15 minutes of it with subtitles and realized, my God, I'm just reading this thing. I'm not watching it. And as you know, the film's eye candy as well as information, so you can't subject people to reading. So we went to the trouble to dub it. We did, and ever since we brought it out, we've just had such an interest, and we're still finalizing our distribution mechanism, because that's important here, because it's a little more stringent over in Europe than it is in America. There's a lot more governmental involvement in entrepreneurship here than there is in America. So we're about to, settle on an effective distribution means, and people will then be able to buy the German DVD off of the website like they can the English DVD right now. So the DVD is available on the website, and for those who want to stream it online, You can rent the video for 48 hours. You can rent the film on Real House. We have it up in German and English. So the Germans who don't need a DVD copy right off the bat and want to watch it, they can visit the website and click on the German version and read everything in German and see it in German as well. That's the best way. And the tour page will describe where the film is showing. And the press page is if you want to follow any interviews or press or reports or anything that we've done since releasing.
Now, I was reading earlier today some of the work of one of the exoarchaeologists. He wrote a book called Forbidden Archaeology, and there's a bit in the Mars area about forbidden archaeology because of all the structures there. And he said that he really had it laid out the progression of his work, and that he in the progression of his work he began to outreach to scientific organizations and scientists, and then he would and got invited to their conferences, and then he outreached to universities and got invited to present at universities, and that way began to infiltrate the scientific and the educational world with the forbidden archaeology, the archaeology that shows that on Earth you had advanced humans hundreds of millions of years ago. Advanced humans like us, Homo sapiens. That Homo sapiens is not a development of the last 200,000 years. I know, I'm giving you a lot of work today, assignments. I'm sorry. But I mean, it's such a resource, and I'm an exopolitician, so what can I do, right? But,
well, we got to start putting a list together of contacts, people, and ideas and compile it all. That's the best way, probably.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, or you could get somebody who would begin to outreach to the scientific community and begin to outreach to the universities. Students will just love this. And all students have a budget for films and for outside speakers. And that's a great way to get like Mars exploration, but Mars visitation, current Mars visitation. Because Elon Musk is, I don't know, man, I think Tesla's turning over in his grave for the misappropriation of Tesla's name.
Yeah.
And the exploitation, because magnets, his technology is not Tesla technology. It's just batteries. Batteries are not Tesla technology.
He's turned the Tesla name into his brand, which is kind of
it's a scam.
Yeah, it's a scam. I guess, you could say
why I think he is a disinformation operative. He is. Because he's putting out a cover story for Mars, a false project of Mars visitation, and he's taken the scalar technology of free energy. Tesla could really transform the planet. And you would have Tesla teleportation in 2045 is one of the visions that we have planetary teleportation. And to get to a future planet that is interacting with the rest of universe society, you have to have planetary teleportation. That's one of the infrastructure prerequisites. Now, along comes Elon Musk, and in a bit of misappropriation, in fact, Tesla's heirs could sue him. He misappropriates Tesla's names and is selling us batteries as scalar technology.
Yeah, it's true. If you look at it that way, if you call it what it is, you're absolutely right. And the thing is, I guess he's gotten away with it because so few people knew who Nikola Tesla really was. He's virtually been erased from the history books. Most people think it was Edison, that was the great genius in the electrical field. not Nikola Tesla. And Tesla is really, and that's why it was important, and that's why I wanted you to tell that story in the film, because I think you and I share an admiration for the man and his technology, and I think he really does represent the zeitgeist of our times. And he is, you know, he's somebody who's yet to be really fully vindicated for everything that that was taken from him and misappropriated, and, you know, and used really by forces that really had no business, because his intention was to make it available for the public. You know, he was ecstatic, as far as I read, he was ecstatic about making it available for the public to have free energy and free electricity. And he knew that it would change the standard of living for all the people and have dramatic effects on poverty and technology all around the globe. I mean, you know, things that would have, like the poverty and impoverishment and starvations that have happened on the African continent, by large and far, have happened because they didn't have any electricity to build any kind of like infrastructure to pull water out of the ground, even though it's right there under their feet. And they were exploited by people using ancient old technology to build massive dams and things that destroyed the environment, and they put millions and billions into their pockets. And in the end, all they did is go in there and invade a country to basically rob it of its riches. And you know, a guy like Tesla would have been, he would have changed all that. So it's no surprise to me that his name up till now hasn't really been fully vindicated for what he really truly symbolizes. You know, and I guess, you know, the Tesla car, I mean, everyone loves the cars. Okay, they're great looking, they're cool looking, whatnot, but they're still running on batteries, which still suck juice, which still has to be made by atomic power plants, coal burning, or any of the other conventional polluting, you know, limited technologies which are out there. I mean, even solar is not going to cut it. If you add up all the solar cells in the world and all the wind power in the world, I think I read somewhere that it would satisfy about 12% of the energy needs of the population. So we need a breakthrough in energy, and it's out there. If they would have put the trillions that they've been absconding with to do their secret planetary projects into the public on a level of an Apollo, where, you know, they said, okay, we're going to go to the moon, we're going to do it at the end of the decade. Let's put, you know, whatever you want to think about that whole story. Let's just leave out all the conspiracy that it never happened, they never went to the moon. Let's just say they did. Let's just say they put all the money into it. They put the greatest minds to make it happen together in one place, and they gave them all the money they needed to do it. Well, it symbolizes the fact that the human spirit will find a solution. Now, nobody can tell me that if we took, you know, 30 or 50 or 100 billion, which is a fraction of the income from some major pharmaceutical corporation in a year, and gave it to the 10 or 20 most promising free energy developments that are on the planet right now, that we would not have a free energy solution in our hands within a decade. And this could have happened 20 years ago. And so all the politicians out there, like Merkel or Obama and all these people, they're all part of that massive, you know, disinformation group out there, which is keeping us under an existing system that has limited, you know, political means, that has limited infrastructure, that has, you know, limited resources. Just let it continue their warfare. They can continue having their little strife in the Middle East. They can continue to impregnate us with panic and fear that there's going to be a third world war because of what's going on in Syria, even though everyone that does any kind of research can quickly find out that the rebel forces that are causing a problem in Syria are the ones funded by the same people that are telling us that it's dangerous, that they're dangerous and they're going to cause a war. I mean, it's just all this the whole, it's, you know, it's interesting. You mentioned earlier about how they're like, he's a disinformation, you know, that Elon Musk is a disinformation agent. That's a very interesting subject for me ever since making this film, because I'm beginning to look at all the things out there in the world and asking myself, who really is like a disinformation agent, dispelling, you know, the truth? I mean, is masking as somebody dispelling the truth, and who isn't? Everything. You have to question everything. And I think we need to learn, how do you get through it? And the way to get through it is to listen to your heart, you know, and yet resonate with how your heart feels. If your heart is telling you this person is for real, you will feel that heart connection, because you can always tell somebody who's really genuinely wanting to change things for positive. They have this love for humanity. They have this love for Gaia, for Mother Earth, or whatever you want to call it. And that love shines through in their heart. And that's the first place we feel it. And the heart has a brain, just like we have a brain in our head. And those two brains actually synchronize with each other. So the funny thing is, the brain of the human in the head will take the cue from the brain in the heart. So that's the way through it. That's the way to get to the truth, I think. And so, you know, all these people out there, like the Musks and the you know, the Bezos and whatnot. I mean, I was told also a funny thing that when all these private entrepreneurs finally manage to put together a fleet and they land on Mars, they're going to land and be greeted by the natives that have been there for decades already. So it'll be an eye-opener for them probably too, if they don't already know it.
Yes, yes, extraordinary. Really, really extraordinary. You know, and uh, uh, one of the thoughts that occurred to me as you were expressing all of those insights is that from the exopolitical point of view, uh, uh, there's some studies that used scientific remote viewing to establish interactive communication with a galactic governance body that's responsible for the governance of the galaxy. And they said that the most advantageous communication for Earth society would be to open up initially communication with Mars, you know, kind of, but as citizen to citizen, you know, Martians to Earthians, because the Martians had a lot to offer us, and we have a lot to offer the Martians in turn, because they live in a lot of harsh societies, but they are also, they have a lot to offer us. They have a different way of thinking, etc. So this is a matter of some urgency from an evolution point of view. That is, you can see how, let's say, the satanic or luciferic forces are trying to take us down into a black hole, into an evolutionary cul-de-sac. Well, there are life forces at the same time, let's say that we're trying to open up a dialogue with our fellow neighborhood planet that has our genetic cousins, and where one of our governments has opened up, you know, has a 40, 50-year project there. So now it's the time to open up citizen-to-citizen communications. That's what we did with the Soviet Union back in the 90s, and I actually produced the first live radio program between the United States and the Soviet Union in history. It's called Instant of Cooperation, and it won an award on the floor of the General Assembly.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was invited to meet Gorbachev and everything. So this is the same thing, that we're opening up the first program between the Russians and the Martians and the Earthians. This is going back to the work that Tesla did in 1901 and 1902 from Pikes Peak, you know, with the light. So we are replicating Tesla with the Packing for Mars project and the Mars and a proposal for a congressional hearing for disclosure of life on Mars and the U.S. Mars bases. You know, I mean, just to kind of give it its larger functional, and that there's a good story at the end, and that is that the Galactic Federation, we already have scientific remote viewing transcripts, dialogue, that communications between Mars and Earth, and I published that in the Exopolitics book. Dr. Courtney Brown developed that. So, you know, there's an integrity to that.
Great book, by the way.
Oh, thank you. And so there's an integrity to the project. It's sanctioned by the regional galactic authorities. Okay, then a citizen movement come along. We already had a terrestrial model in the glasnost period of Russia between the citizens and of the U.S. and the citizens of the Soviet Union. This is kind of a glasnost between Earth and Mars, sort of. And you know, and in glasnost it was citizen to citizen. So we have to figure out how to get in touch with some Martians. I know people in California that go to Martian support groups.
Really?
Yeah, they're support groups in California for Martians that come over by the Mars jump room, and you know, they have weekly support groups that say they have some terrestrials there, I guess, you know, and for a adjustment from living in Mars to living on Earth. One of our colleagues, Brett Stillings, used to be a member of one of the Martian support groups. And yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. So this is getting more deeply, getting down into the deep, you know, the deep interaction, the deep ecology between Earth and Mars. But that's where we have to go in order to implement this this rapprochement. See, by one theory, we've been in separate societies for 12,500 years, since 9,500 of them BC, and that the solar system catastrophe, when a fragment of the Vela supernova came in through the solar system and made Mars into an oboloid planet, and also destroyed Earth's maritime civilization known as Atlantis. So we've been separate that long. So this is really like, okay, now we got to come together. And now we're at the kind of glasnost citizen level, citizen to citizen.
Well, I think it's on a genetic level that we feel it too. I mean, all these events you're describing, they reside in the morphogenetic field of us, and they're still deeply embedded as cellular memory. And I think people can still remember Atlantis on that level, and they still feel the fear of the catastrophe on that level. And it's just, you know, it's shaped us as a race, you know, from those early days to this point right now. And we're again on the cusp of a big change, an evolutionary leap that is needed desperately. There's many ways you could look at it. You know, there's people that can provide evidence that we're environmentally, you know, bringing ourselves to a point where of no return. There's people that can make a case for, you know, an eventual war that will take place that will annihilate massive parts of the planet and make it uninhabitable for decades to come. You know, and there's people that can show that there's, you know, bodies coming from other solar systems or that tie into our solar system on a very, very large scale that periodically over large cycles come through and cause cataclysmic events to happen. So, I mean, I think we all feel it. And I remember an interview I was watching recently of a Russian, a very interesting Russian physicist. His name is Ratsin. I think Ratsin is his name. Yeah, and he's somebody that's been talking about how our morphogenetic field already feels the next universe that we're actually going to leap into. That we're living. There's a multitude of parallel universes, and the universe that we are destined to inherit is already within the field for us to move to. So we need to catalyze events and make things happen to wake people up to this other reality, even if it means shaking them out of a sleep. You know, in a way, the Trump election symbolizes that kind of a need for us on a very large level to shake things up. But I think that's only one perspective. I think the kind of shaking up we need has to happen on a deeper metaphysical and spiritual level as well.
Indeed.
You know, that's something I wanted the film really to get into as well, and this is why, you know, we have Big Bye, you know, in the film talking about the spiritual aspect, because any kind of a venture into this crazy world of you know, of this other reality which seems to be going on requires a full perspective, not just, you know, from the level of evidence or from the level of witness and whistleblowers, but also from a spiritual level. Where are we blocked spiritually? You know, how do we recognize the mechanisms that we use daily to psych ourselves out, to talk ourselves out of our full potential? I mean, you know, it's not a main theme, but it's one of the themes. I mean, you could probably make a whole series on that subject alone. Just that this mental programming that we all suffer from that keeps us limited.
Right. Ah. So, you know, I feel that very optimistic about now, in the midst of our conversation. And do you find that in your conversations and interviews uh, about packing for Mars, you have this effect on people?
Apparently, I do. I've had some people tell me I'm their favorite guest, even, you know, which I think is cool. I don't know where I don't practice this, you know. I guess I've lived long enough to sort of pick up a lot of things, and when you have a chance to sort of talk to another conscious being, you know, such as yourself, and you're one of the more exceptional people because you've really taken yourself into this field a long, long time, and you're one of the early pioneers of a lot of really fringe thinking and fringe ideas, and kudos to you for that. But when you're sitting across from someone such as yourself, of course, you know, I think we're both generating kind of a resonant field, and this field is channeling information through, and that's all I want to do. When I do these interviews, you know, on the one hand, of course, we want to market the film and get people aware of the film, because, you know, it's a big wide world and we have a lot more people that we have to get the film to, because we've only just scratched the surface of the amount of people that should be seeing it. But on the other hand, it's really all about resonating with people and getting them to open themselves up, and on multiple levels.
Well, you realize that that you're taking the 1938 invasion from Mars that caused a panic, and that who was that movie actor? Yeah, when Orson Welles, yeah, War of the Worlds, when Orson Welles faked an invasion from Mars on a Saturday night radio program. It caused a panic.
Yeah.
And now, so the mandate here, and that was on a Rockefeller radio, that was in Rockefeller Center. And that ties into Governor Winthrop Rockefeller, which
Really?
ties into the Clintons, which ties into Podesta, which ties into the partial disclosure to keep the Rockefellers' ownership of the industrial base in the secret space program a secret.
I believe it. But it's
Yeah.
funny because there's that. I always reflect on the War of the Worlds as being, Alternative 3 as being the British version of the War of the Worlds, because
Right.
Watkins, in writing and releasing that, first, of course, there was the program, right? Let's not forget that classic, very rarely seen at the time. I think it was, they were initially going to broadcast on an April Fool's Day. It was a concocted screenplay, by David Ambrose to basically mock the way people believe everything they see on television. So they had taken advantage of the public, which had watched a show weekly, which was always science-based, and they put together a show with actors to fake, this whole Martian colonization thing. And it had the same, in the British sense, the Brits are more, conservative than the Americans, but nonetheless, it caused, a huge panic. We're talking, tens of thousands of people calling into the television station, outraged at this could be happening, because they didn't read the fine print that said this is a fictional dramatization. And and it only really was broadcast, I think, once in England, once in Canada, and once in Japan. And now, of course, you can find it on the internet. And when you watch Packing for Mars, you'll see a few pregnant, samples of the show to demonstrate, because Packing for Mars is carrying on the tradition. It was War of the Worlds and Alternative 3, and now it's Packing for Mars, because we're breaking down, the situation in terms of, okay, how much of it was real, and how much of it could be real, and why did it happen, and why would it, why could it be plausible that it's happening right now, and what is the evidence for it right now? So in that sense, it's carrying on that tradition of sort of shaking things up. And a lot of people that tell me they think the film's great and they loved it, I think that's nice. I love to hear compliments. Of course, it always flatters your ego. But actually, I'd like to hear, man, that film freaked me out, and it shook me up, and it depressed me, or because some people that saw it originally in Contact in the Desert came up to the next day, came to us and said they couldn't sleep. It shook them up so much that they really they began to question a lot of things. And that's the effect that it's supposed to have. I mean, I love being praised by the cinematography and the music and whatnot, but the fact is the film is intended to kind of shake things up a little bit.
Well, good. And so I think that it would be a good film to show along with a panel of Mars experiencers in the U.S. visitation program, Mars visitation program, and the message to the Congress people and their aides and assistants is that, look, $3 trillion of U.S. money has been spent on this. Open your vision, and here is a program. And so this is to start the whole glasnost, the open glasnost, the rapprochement of the two societies, and there's no way to go but up. I think that produced that movie that was made about a decade ago called Mars Attacks. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
That was made.
Cucumber heads and all that.
Yeah. That was made so as to put fright in Earthians,
yes,
to deter them to have a rapprochement with the Martian population.
Right. Well, you ever notice that the majority of films involving extraterrestrials are always negative? They're always coming here, of course, to destroy us.
Yeah.
Right? Always coming to attack. They're always coming because they need something, they want to take something. That's why that film Arrival is so cool. And another film that is really worth watching is called Midnight Special. That film, I don't know if you know it, but that film is also amazing. It's just, that's the first film that we saw that really goes into the idea that there's a parallel reality right there, right here among us, that's invisible because it's vibrating at another frequency. And some individuals are part of that frequency and can feel it and see it. And in this particular film, they opened up bubbles so that certain people could perceive that other dimension for a brief period of time. And I think that's something that we need to open ourselves up to.
Wow. For me, our conversation is a portal right now today, and a portal has just opened up with your saying, yes, we're available to show Packing for Mars to a congressional audience.
Absolutely.
And for me, that's a portal, because that's a way forward to break through the matrix, their matrix perceptual wall that they had placed with the secret space program for exploitation, whereas it's supposed to be a citizen participation among friendly planets, like your next door neighbor. I mean, Can you imagine the interplanetary trade between Earth and Mars? What that would do for Earth? Can you imagine the end of wars on Earth and the beginning of interplanetary trade? What that's going to do to education? Can you imagine? The Martians are more technologically advanced than we are in certain areas,
Absolutely. I think it would be.
and can help us probably, get off fossil fuel.
Yeah, I think that generally the perception has to be clearly made that in other words, we have to crystallize a vision where there's an end to an embargo of information technology and wealth, because of a paradigm in thinking that made us believe that we couldn't all, have a certain amount of wealth because we don't have the resources for it. I mean, if I remember growing up and then everyone was saying, if all Africans, had the same level of technology that we do, well, we'd be even far more polluted than we already are. And yeah, I guess in a sense that if they had access to the same horrible, polluting, limiting technologies that we've been using, yes. But I'm a firm believer that we need to release the technology which is indeed available, which is being used on the Martian colonies, which is being used by the breakaway civilization. And if it is, we wouldn't have these problems. We wouldn't have wars, we wouldn't have these divisions, borders between countries, and we might even actually learn to cherish and respect the diversity of culture that we have on the planet, rather than push this agenda of a one world, unified globalization that's taking place. I mean, this whole term globalization, it has two sides. On the one side, you have to say, yes, it's great, we're a more global civilization. It's great that I can pick up my computer and I can be sitting 9 hours away from you talking right now in 2 different time zones. That's the one side of it. But the other side of it is that, there's this, exploitation taking place through the limitation of technology, which is destroying things. And that doesn't have to be the case. And the Mars, question, and even Carrie Cassidy puts it so well, it's like it's a symbol for what we are going through on Earth right now as humanity. It's a symbol for us to break through into other realms of thought, other realms of communication, which were pioneered over 100 years ago by people like Nikola Tesla. And this is a great opportunity. And, it's interesting because Carrie Cassidy and Bill Ryan were also really inspired by the disclosure movement, by Stephen Greer. And I remember them distinctly, especially Bill Ryan, who I had a lot of contact with after starting with the film, telling me that basically they really took up the path and wanted to know and the true spirit, like the rest of us. They didn't wait for professional equipment to come along or a film studio or TV production crew. They just went out there and they did it. And kudos to them for opening up and doing it, because they did it really in the true spirit. And they were completely attacked. I mean, they were, people were coming, and even to this day, they're still being, harassed and still being, and can always kind of tell by the people who are getting most of the flack, and maybe not in every case, but a lot of times those people who are getting the blocks, those are the ones that are really, really trying to get it out, because there really is no gain in it for them. There's no gain financially for putting out this information. You're doing it because you're gaining only in the sense that you're gaining through the collective wisdom that we all have as fellow citizens on the planet.
I'm just thinking that a lot of the images, the cultural images of Mars toward Earth in the United States and in the Anglo world have been primarily negative. War of the Worlds, Mars attacks.
Yeah.
Whereas in my case, I grew up in a different culture. I grew up in Cuba. And I remember as a 6-year-old child in my grandmother's house in Havana, the most popular song on the radio was "The Martians have landed and they landed dancing cha-cha-cha.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah,
That's hilarious.
and it was, and I used to dance around the dining room to that tune going on the radio, and I still have it. You know, it's a great tune, and I've always had the image that when the Martians land, they're going to land dancing, and everybody's having a great time. It's party time. Now, you know, that could be, those are musicians. I don't know who wrote the music. What was that? Just inspiration, you know, that wasn't, you know, and then, you know, it's not the big lie, right, or whatever. So, but wouldn't it be good if suddenly the solar system flipped from negative to positive? Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yes.
Like all the satanics and Dracos. Well, guess what, guys? You've had the last 200,000 years. You're expelled. Boom, you're gone. And they're just expelled overnight. And we resume positive relations with the Martians. You know, and the long solar system nightmare is over. You know, and it's for the historians to figure out the Star Wars that we just went through.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I think if it's not possible, I would posit that if it's not possible to expel them, that we take initiative ourselves and forgive them.
Yeah,
And
good.
actively forgive them and realize that we each needed, you know, your analogy of a dance was very, very well put, because it is a dance. It is a dance between the evil and light forces, basically to really push us. And that's why at the end of the film, you know, there's a particular scene where I would call them the archons make a cameo appearance, you know, through the voice of the universe. And it's that voice of the universe telling us, we're not out to destroy you. We're only there to push you to try and realize, you know, your true potential. And so it's like, you know, it's like the kid that's being bullied by the schoolyard bully all of his, you know, all the time he's at school. And one day he just musters up the courage and learns to basically, you know, love the bully and make sense to him and crack through his bulliness. And suddenly the bully becomes his biggest, you know, friend. And you know, there's an explosion of compassion and empathy for each other. And both sides suddenly realize, oh my God, we've been fooled into being enemies. We're actually not enemies at all. We're just the same beings on other sides of the coin. And we need each other, and we're helping each other to the next level of evolution. And for me, you know, that's the vision I like to hold on to as well, because I don't necessarily think expelling is going to be the solution either, because it's just going to be a rebound effect. You know, you kick them out for a while and they're going to come whacking back again. So why not just knock that out completely by saying, hey, right, you know, we love you, brothers and sisters. You can't hurt us. You know, we're immortal, invincible beings of light. So you might be able to get rid of our bodies for a while, but our consciousness survives. It's now evident and proven every day more and more in quantum physics and whatnot, that we live indefinitely. There is no time anyway. So you can maybe get rid of our costume, but you can't get rid of us. So we have to learn to dance together.
Amen. Very good. Yeah, I mean, this is there's a virtual portal of hope. Not hope. I don't want to. There's a actual portal. I can see it opening up now of actuality in a Mars Earth kind of glasnost. You know, a kind of an opening up, and you know, we're really focusing on getting our two cultures back together.
Yes.
And it rested with the defeat of Hillary Clinton. Isn't that amazing? I mean, I'm just looking at it from the exopolitical point of
Yes,
view.
no, you're right. It is amazing. It's a very important symbol. And I actually thought she would be elected, you know. So when she wasn't elected, for me, it symbolized something has changed.
Yeah.
symbolically at least. Maybe politically not. I don't know yet. That'll tell. Time will tell, right?
Yeah.
But symbolically speaking, something definitely took place that is unprecedented. An event, you could say, in history on par with some of the negative events that have happened, but in a positive sense, that
Yeah.
people cried out and everybody was watching. Just
Yeah.
like he was watching on 9/11, but it was an opposite polarity. It was a horrible event. It was a catastrophic, traumatizing event. What happened with Trump is, some people is interesting because some people might look at it as a traumatizing event because they didn't want him to be elected.
Yeah.
But I think what will happen will be interesting how Trump handles his responsibility right now in the universe as a very, very focused and powerful being with the chance and opportunity to actually make some serious change happen will be very, very interesting to watch. And I think, everybody in the world should support that, even if they don't necessarily agree with the guy, or maybe he sounds like he doesn't sound particularly sophisticated, and maybe he was, he's an overt womanizer or whatever you want to accuse him of. In a lot of ways, you got to say that this beingness that we've developed on Earth is very private. We all feel we're cut off from the source. Everyone always complains that they're alone, that they're alone in the universe. But the flip side of that is, it's nice to be private. It's nice to be able to entertain your own paranoid, crazy, schizophrenic ideas in your brain and feel that nobody's going to pull your pants down in public because you're not telepathically transmitting them. Everybody can pick them up. You're actually having the luxury of living in that absolute private darkness, if you may. But by the same token, Trump actually lived it out in the open, what everybody probably in their own mind, would think, right? So like maybe he'd see some woman and he'd go, and in his own mind, he wouldn't dare to say it, but he does, right? So it's like isn't he just a symbol for what we're afraid to bear because of embarrassment or because of status or because of personal, maintaining our position of personal illusion that we're somebody who never would entertain such thoughts. I mean, I think we have to be open to however, grotesque and crass, whatever it was that he said. In a way, humans aren't really all that developed. If you read the letters that Mozart was writing to his family in the 1700s, the level of sophistication in his letters was very high, but it wasn't really that much different from what's going on around us right now. He didn't have an iPad and a computer and a Mac or whatever, but he had the same similar mental patterns, the same issues with females, with love, with parents, with authority. Nothing much has changed. So I think we have to realize that none of us are without sin. And maybe Trump is vulgar and he's now a president, but he symbolizes kind of a certain open vulgarity that I think maybe we should all embrace with all of us in our political systems and everything that's out there right now, which has been poo-pooed. But in a way, has it really helped us along? No, we're all complaining inside all the time, but are we really going to hit the streets and do anything about it? Most of us don't.
Right. Wow. Well, I'm speechless.
Did I shut you?
I'm kind of like, well, yeah. I mean,
well, that's been fun. It's been great talking to you. It's long overdue.
Yeah. And I am. Look, you have started my exopolitical engines, which have been like dormant for about 2 years, because we who were the Mars exopolitical kind of contingent were like pushed out, actively pushed out as soon as the money came in. We were just like excluded. And and I spoke to all the parties involved, and it was on the basis of Mars. And so I think that there was a deep agenda there. And that agenda has been swept aside because the principles behind that agenda, who's traced back to the Rockefeller brothers, because it was Lawrence Rockefeller Initiative. Governor Winthrop Rockefeller traces back to David Rockefeller, who is the Western Hemisphere agent of the Rothschilds. And so you're dealing probably with this being a draconian planet and it being draconian policy that Earth humans and Mars humans are kept apart. And are we going to challenge that policy or not?
Right. It's mind control.
Yeah. And so I think that we are about to challenge that policy.
Definitely.
And that there were factions. So far, the three factions that we've identified inside the exopolitical community as far as handlers or handled are CIA, Office of Naval Intelligence, and ASIO, the Australian Security and Intelligence Organization. Those are explicitly. There might be MI5 as well, probably. You can identify one, or MI6. And those are the handlers or handled by. And so, you just have to get around those bumps in the road or those kind of things. But now politically, they've been swept aside and discredited, I think. And so now it's legitimate with Packing for Mars having won the awards at the conferences that the Life on Mars and U.S. $3 trillion program to put bases on Mars and maintain them, that's a legitimate question to bring to the U.S. Congress.
I'm all for it.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else substantively that you wanted to bring up that we haven't talked about?
Well, I just, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I mean, Tonia Madenford and I are just really, so feel so blessed that the people that worked with us on this film, that opened themselves up to us on this film, gave us so much and trusted us. And I know that it's made the film all the stronger, all the more powerful, because it really, I believe, is one of those films that delves into this idea of the whole mind control aspect. And what I think what challenged a lot of people about Mars, and like you were saying, is, and Andrew Bushago symbolizing the kind of phenomena which is taking place, where there are people around the world which are having deep-seated memories surface of themselves being involved in things that were supposed to not come out. And this is not something which can be stopped much longer. It's happening in many, many cases. And I think what upsets a lot of people about those kinds of persons in the world is not that what they're saying is hard to believe maybe, but that they're bold enough to come out and take that position that they are convinced of their message. And that is the thing you need to take away from it. You don't necessarily have to agree with every person that you meet in the world, but you have to look at this idea of their truth and why they would take the bold step to put their truth into the public under the consequence of being ridiculed, of being slandered, of causing, the system to disrupt. Those people should be openly received and welcomed by us, and the dialogue of open, free spirit and information being shared and put on the table before it's cast down, because those are the same people that have to take the responsibility that whatever information they're disclosing to the world and standing behind will one day be, put into the greater perspective, so they'll know, what it is that information symbolized for them. Is it a symbol for something? Is it an actual experience? Are they tapping into parallel dimensions? I mean, it's such a fascinating subject and world out there that we can't discount it any longer. We need to put all of it out there in an open and free spirit and enjoy it and try to have some fun with it too. Because the positive side of all of this is, yes, there is amazing technology out there. Yes, we have some brothers and sisters out there in the universe which it's our right and destiny to connect with. And I think that Tonia and I are sort of dedicated to topics that will open up more and more of this crack into these other worlds. There's artifacts in Packing from Mars, which were found in areas of Mexico, which are now uncovering a completely ancient lost civilization, which clearly shows the connection between humanity and our star brothers that reaches back tens of thousands, if not many more years into the past, which we have all yet to discover and inherit, which is very exciting and fascinating. So, all I can say is to people listening, check out Packing from Mars and use it as a stepping stone to get deeper into the subject matter. Open your mind for it. Try to watch it in a sober state when it's not too late at night, so you can take it all in. And keep checking out programs like Alfred's programs and be open and aware for all the new interesting things that are coming at us, and don't be afraid.
Well, I want to thank you, first of all, Frank, for creating Packing from Mars, and you and Tonia for really bringing it to the public and for bringing it all around the world, and for continuing to bring it now. And hopefully, I mean, I am serious, and on my end, I'm going to bring it to the Mars Anomaly Research Society as a project. We're a legitimate non-profit, just going to do everything according to channels. I mean, you in Germany know how important channels are, right? We're going to go through nonprofits to the Congress. It's all legitimate. And so we'll be in touch as each step goes forward. I have to meet with their board and get the approval and everything. But and I want to thank you for taking the time out to come on the program today, and give my best regards and thanks to Tonia Madenford, your co-producer and co-director, that's the correct term, on this film. And may we succeed in the future as the project has succeeded in the past in an exponential way.
Thank you, and there's warm greetings to you as well from Tonia Madenford. She wanted me to mention that, of course.
Oh, good. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alfred.
Until the next.
Until the next time. Bye.